Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another, what kind of session is this? This session is a hot, burning topic. Very, very relevant for all of us. It's on the lips of every person today. Sexual harassment is not just about women being harassed. Men are harassed by women as well. So it's a session relevant to all of us. Those two videos actually nailed it for me this evening. We talk about that we know everything about sexual harassment until it confronts us, and we're left not sure what we should do. We're very hesitant. So I am certainly looking forward to PP Carlotta's presentation. These sessions are designed for us to learn and to be able to bring things that may be resting in the back of our minds to the front so that we're able to help our fellow Rotarians navigate these uncertain waters as we go through the Rotary year. I encourage you to sign up on the sessions. We only have 3 more after this evening and then district conference. So stick with us. Thank you for joining us every evening. I am sure that you found the sessions to be very enlightening, very powerful. So stick with it, and I look forward to the question and answer session at the end. Welcome, and I hand you back over to the team.
Will I start, Luana?
Go ahead, Pal.
Thank you, Luana. Pleasant good evening, everyone. All protocols observed. On behalf of the Prefect training team, it is indeed my privilege to be given this opportunity to introduce our speaker for this evening's session. Past President Carlotta is the Charter President of the Rotary Club of Starbrook, Georgetown, and President-elect for the upcoming Rotary year. She is a clinical psychologist who is passionate about educating and advocating for survivors of gender-based violence. In recent years, Carlotta has provided a comprehensive trauma-informed response for justice-involved female and female-identified teenage survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking. Carlotta holds a graduate degree in psychology from the University of the Virgin Islands, as well as a Master of Arts degree. As a psychotherapist, she provides trauma-informed care to various populations, including survivors of gender-based violence, couples, and at-risk youth, using a multimodal approach that draws from various kinds of interventions to respond to the negative sequelae of chronic trauma. Carlotta is a woman of faith who worked extensively with communities of faith to raise awareness and educate the leadership on the complexity of intimate partner violence, and to equip them with the relevant tools for effective responses to victims. She is the mother of 2 handsome and amazing young men, Raphael and Javon. As a woman in ministry who survived intimate partner violence, she uses her voice and gifting to advocate and empower women of faith who are survivors of intimate partner violence. At this time, I invite you to join me in welcoming our facilitator for this evening session on sexual harassment in Rotary, Past President Carlotta Budi.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. All our protocols being established. Great. So I want to thank you all, and especially the organizing committee, for this opportunity to share on such a very critical and important topic in the world of Rotary. Today, we will be discussing sexual harassment, what that looks like, and we're going to talk a little bit about you know methods of addressing harassment in the club, if and when it happens, or maybe I should say when and if. Um, I want to ask that you take care of yourselves. This is very important because I was researching some Caribbean statistics, but because I have worked extensively in the US, a lot of the information I have quickly at hand would be statistics from the US, but I got a little bit of statistics from Jamaica that said 81% of women are frequently harassed by men, and 17% of men are frequently harassed by women. 77% of sexual harassment is verbal, 51% unwelcome sexual touching, 41% cyber sexual harassment, and 30% unwanted genital flashing. Most of us, therefore, sitting in this room, 81% according to one Caribbean study, have experienced some level, whether it's verbal, unwelcome touch, cyber harassment, or even flashing. And so as we're going to have this conversation, it may trigger you in some ways, may bring up things for you that has happened in your past that you have not yet acknowledged, things that would have happened that you have buried as a coping mechanism. And so I want to encourage you to use your breath. You can simply exhale. You can I'll encourage you to get a bottle of water or a glass of water because taking a sip is very helpful. And I will even ask that if you feel so uncomfortable, you can leave the space for a moment. Just get up and walk away. And whenever you're ready, you can come back into this space. But sexual harassment is pervasive, and it has touched most of us, if not all of us, because if it hasn't touched us personally, it has touched a sister of ours, a friend of ours, a colleague of ours. And so today may be a very uncomfortable space for some of us. I am speaking to you from a feminist lens, where I am looking at how women are portrayed and presented in comparison to men. Listening before, you would know that sexual harassment is not necessarily a woman's issue, because statistics says men are also harassed, but the prevailing situation shows that women are harassed not only in the workplace, but in many spaces which they now occupy. I want for you, if you don't mind, to think for a moment of how a woman is treated differently and with sexual undertones as it relates or in comparison to men. Any experience that you would like to share in the chat. You can even look. Let's just talk about where we're at right now. Let's talk about Rotary. What have you seen? Have you ever been able to identify a treatment that is different, a space that's created that is not as comfortable as for one as it is for the other. Just think of anything that you can share that shows that if you make that comparison, you see that a woman is treated differently than a man. Let me see if I can see any of your comments in the chat. Any situation, any comparison you can make. You see women treated this way, but you see men treated that way. And it's quite noticeable to you. Do we have, I am not, okay, hiring practices. Someone is asking if I can repeat the question. Have you seen in your experience where a woman is treated differently from a man? Any example? It can be those with sexual undertones or just a different treatment of a woman as compared to how a man is treated in any situation. But we can also even look at things we see in our own clubs at Rotary. Since we don't need to travel far, we can just look at our own clubs and see the spaces we create. If you see a difference, recognition with a clear undertone, okay, right? Yes, the women deal with the food while the men gonna deal with the money, yes. All right, you could continue to add your comments and I'll come back to look at them. But why are we really having this conversation today? Because we need to first acknowledge that traditionally, Rotary was made up of men, seen as an exclusive old boys club, right? So before I joined Rotary years ago, when I know that there's something called Rotary, I know it was rich, older men, right? And so in that room, there would be powerful men sitting around the table, having a nice drink, having some lunch, having their own, and what some people call locker room conversations, conversations that men are having, they're creating their spaces. And then women joined the table. Women brought seats and put them at the table. And now we have no longer powerful men sitting at the table, but powerful women are sitting at the table. But how are these powerful women viewed? Should I use the word powerful women or should I just say women? Because if I use the word powerful men, Rotary, people who are traditionally viewed, right? If I'm not a Rotarian and I'm telling you what I'm seeing older men who are accomplished, who own businesses, who have money, wealth, and so who have power. So we have powerful men. But when women sit at the table, are we also saying that we have powerful women sitting at the table? Or do we just have women sitting at the table? The way we frame our discussions, the lens that we use, is very important to sexual harassment finding its way into Rotary. Because if men and women sit at the table and acknowledge each other as equal, then perhaps we have a different conversation. So this conversation today is a very necessary one, because we need to determine, we need to reframe. I am sure we need to reframe, but we need this conversation to help us to see where we need to go and how we are going to reframe. Sexual harassment is about power and dominance. And the speaker earlier on the TED Talk, I was smiling. I said, okay. It is not because a man wants to have sex that he harasses a woman. And you will forgive me for coaching the discussion using a perpetrator as male, because the literature overwhelmingly suggests that women are sexual are harassed. 81% of women, right, are harassed, and 17% of men. So when I say a woman is harassed and the man is harassing, I am using the statistics to frame or to coach the conversation, right? So it's really about power. It's because in our, go back to how Rotary was seen in the beginning. Look at the traditional view. It was a place for powerful men who have access to money and can make a difference in society. And so power is associated. And with harassment, that power, our society is generally set up as a patriarchal one. Women are now creating spaces so that they can be included. Traditionally, the power resides with the man. And so when we look at sexual harassment, it is that position, the powerful position that I hold, that will allow me or cause me to feel that it's okay for me to speak to you in a certain way, for me to touch you in a certain way, because the power resides in me. I can do so. And so it's not usually because the woman is wearing a short skirt, or she has full lips and she has highlighted them with some lipstick or lip gloss, or she sways in a certain way. That has absolutely nothing to do with sexual harassment. That has to do with the power I have, that I can use it in such a way. And it is not that I'm using it. In fact, is that I am misusing the power that I have. And it is indeed a form of discrimination. So when we talk about sexual harassment and power, we're also seeing sexual harassment as a behavior, misusing the power. And again, we want to go back to framing how is a woman traditionally seen in a lot of times women are objectified because they are there to do a service. I don't know how many professional women are sitting at this table, and you're sitting in the boardroom, and perhaps you're the only woman at that table. And this is what we have to consider even at Rotary. And so it's time, somebody wants coffee, and we're having a meeting at Rotary. So it's 3 of the guys in the club, or 4 guys and 2 of the girls in the club, or 1 woman and 4 guys, and we're planning a fundraiser, but we need something to drink. What usually happens? Anybody wants to put that? Yes, the woman takes care of the drinks or the snacks or whatever it is. Somebody will actually ask you, Sonia, could you get us, they just look at you, they ask you. It is just very casual and usual, and nobody thinks, why is it not, why don't we use a powerful male that sits at the table? And when we have just men, we have servers, don't we? You go to some clubs and you see men, and yeah, Robin says, I don't know, Robin, are you female? I will get the drinks and snacks. So I want you to look at your club. I want you to look at your club and look at practices. So it is usual for you to look around and say, Carlotta, you make some coffee? Okay. Let us say we have a fellowship. What would the men bring to the fellowship? Generally, first thing, what are they bringing? Put it in the chat if you'd like. What are you bringing? What are the men bringing? Drinks, ice, yes. Rita says she never offers. I don't offer either. I can't make coffee. I don't drink coffee, please. I usually say, I've been asked to make coffee before. I said, please, you would not be able to drink my coffee. If you drink coffee, make it yourself, because I don't drink coffee. I don't know how to make it. I mean, I go to all that extent to say I don't know to make, but it is true. I don't drink coffee. I don't know make coffee. But it is, are we saying, let's go back. We're saying that Rotary is made up of powerful people, people with access to finance, access to all kinds of resources, access to people in power. And so that we can have a medical clinic, we can help with COVID vaccines, we can work to end polio, because we have access. We are seen as powerful people. Men in Rotary seen as powerful people. Now that women are seated at the table, are they also powerful women or just women? This is important to us. This is very important to this discussion, so that the behavior, the objectifying is very important. Are you objectifying a powerful woman? How comfortable are you? Or are you objectifying a woman who is there to entertain, to take care of? A lot of times it is not very overt. We don't think in the front of our brain that this is what, but the bias, the unconscious bias comes out. The way you think, because you're not going to look at another powerful man and say, go get the drinks. You call for the waiter. But if a woman is sitting at the table, you're very comfortable to say, get some, would you make some coffee, please? So I want us to start to think about how we see each other, how we see each other as we create and occupy space in Rotary. So sexual harassment is a behavior, but not only is it a behavior, but it's an unwelcome behavior. The advances, and we started to talk in the first video about the things, the unwanted, the unwelcome kind of behaviors. All right. The long hugging, and when you come in, what do you do with the powerful guys? How do you greet? Even if you will hug them, do you squeeze them? Do you linger? So it's and that's when I was asking if you see the difference in the treatment. You know, we will say it's cultural. Okay, darling. So you say, oh, that's cultural, that's nothing. But it's the relaxing of and the casualness that that can potentially lead to behaviors that are unwelcomed and inappropriate. And so these are the little things we need to look at, coming back to powerful men. And do we just have women in Rotary, or do we see the women as powerful women as well? So I'm going to the chat because I want to see what people are saying. Are we still with the food? We're talking about some food. Male or female, which open. Okay. All right. So if one other important thing here, one moment, I have to close that screen. You know, some other unwelcome behaviors. I know that people sit around a table and you have very light discussions, you know, and you make some jokes and so on. But we have to look at how offensive some of what we say can be to another person. And so some of the unwelcome behaviors, not only the long hugging, the excessive holding and touching, drawing somebody much closer to give a hug because, well, they're female, calling them certain names, even though you may think it's endearing. If you're not calling a member of your gender the same thing, then perhaps, even though you may say it's cultural for me to call her darling, it becomes inappropriate. So what we want to consider today, it's not only what my intentions are. And a lot of people say, well, I don't mean anything. I mean, this is just me. I don't mean anything. It's not what you mean. It's how it is received. It's not only the intent, and it does not matter how noble your intentions are, but it's the impact, how the person is receiving what you are saying or doing. The impact is what is very important and what we need to consider. How is the person on the other side, on the other end, receiving what I am saying or what I am doing? A lot of times, and in recent times, I have had to investigate or talk to people about sexual harassment. And people generally say, but I didn't mean that. I didn't mean any harm. That's not what I meant. It's not what you mean. It's how it was received. Sexual harassment is not about your intent. It is about how the person receiving it, how they perceive it. It's how it is impacting them. So Virginia says, I agree, Bal. Okay, some Bal would have said something before. So maybe I really want people involved, and I'm so sorry. I like the generally women in Rotary are treated with respect, Balmati. Okay, generally. So if we say 100%, we're better. If we have one, we have an issue. My mother raised me to be unfailingly polite and chivalrous, but that was 40 years ago. In modern business, charity, and social settings, it is outdated and could indeed be considered as sexual harassment. I've sometimes wondered about this and have found that ingrained habits come to the fore unless I deliberately suppress them. I have to remember not to assist in case I offend. Please advise from the feminist point of view. I agree with Bal. I was just going to mention that. I served in 3 clubs in 2 different districts and have only experienced respect. What I think is still happening, both in and outside of Rotary, is that boys' club behavior. Okay. All right. So paying Ping, if you don't mind, I don't mind just responding to some of these as I go. I feel better with the interaction than just talking to you or at you. So if you don't mind, I know question and answering is coming up, but it is easier for me to interact with people in this way.
That's fine, Carlotta. You can go ahead.
I can go ahead? Okay, great.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So again, the intent. And I use the one you were taught. A lot of it can be sexual harassment because the person does not feel comfortable with it. And even though you think it's chivalrous, it is offensive. And so at the end of the presentation, I have a slide that says using the rule of thumb. But okay, some people feel you meet someone, oh, it's cultural, we hug. And that's your intention and your experience. But you should not put your culture or your experience on me. One of the reasons why we discourage people from hugging, unless the female or the other person, male or female, unless that person is open to it, it's because a lot of people have sexual trauma and touch is triggering for some people. A lot of people don't share these things with you because they will feel out of place. They will have to disclose one, and they feel like I'm in the wrong place if I can't just take a hug or if I just can't take a joke. People feel genital. I did not know genital flashing was a thing. Somebody will send you a message and you open it as a genital part, and they feel it's and they put LOL or they put a big laugh and as though it's funny. And these things are things that people just do. But your intent, and they ask why you so stuck up and your intent is not as important as the impact that it has on a person. And maybe we will delve into what Gregory is talking about more specifically as we go on. And I did say not too long ago that one of the things, the impact is the debilitating stress reaction. The crude jokes. If your club, if the board, everyone is comfortable, then okay. But if you have people on the board that's not comfortable with crude remarks and sexist jokes and jokes and comments about their body parts and what you did last night and what you're dreaming about, if some people are uncomfortable with that, then you can't do that. It does not matter how comfortable you are with it, because sexual harassment, like we said in the beginning, a lot of people were not just harassed, but they were assaulted. A lot of people have a lot of unresolved trauma and reactions to these things. They may not tell you anything, but it makes them anxious to come to club. Because if I come to club, somebody's going to talk about my skirt, or somebody's going to talk about my butt, or somebody's going to talk about my full lips, or somebody's going to talk about my cleavage or my breast. And so they're anxious, very anxious when it's Wednesday evening or Tuesday midday to come into that space. They come to the space and they can't speak. They can't share because their minds, all they're thinking about is what's going to happen when he comes and whispers in my ear. And you may think, oh, it's nothing. I just whisper and say, you look very sexy. And you think I look very sexy is a compliment. But for me, you are triggering me. You're causing me to remember what has happened to me 5 years ago or just 3 days ago that I didn't tell anybody. And then it reinforces this stereotype of women as sex objects. They're just objectified, and it reinforces that stereotype. And then it, of course, the club relations, because then we go to our sides. You tell me I'm upset. This body says, well, she's too thin-skinned or he's too thin-skinned, and we have problems in the club when it comes to relations. So the impact of the behavior has to be considered even higher than the intent of the person. How am I accepting, receiving your words, your compliments? So those are some of the issues with harassment. And you're thinking that, oh, you know, I'm just paying a compliment. And so how is that an issue? I am just being nice, but it's not what you are saying that we should consider. It's what I am feeling as a result of what you're saying or what you're doing. And then the negative public relations. We put everything on social media, even Rotarians. And so we put all, you know, everything that upsets and frustrates and stresses us out, we put that. And then it's in the public space because I tell my mother or I tell my brother or my friend, and then they're upset about it. And our Rotary business is now out in the public, and it's really negative public relations for us. And then it has a demoralizing effect on everyone. And of course, the financial cost, because if we're sued, you know, clubs can be sued for sexual harassment. And so not only we have negative public relations, but now we have a cost to the club. So it's very important. And I know some of you have real life experiences in this, how it has impacted the club, the public relations, and even the cost to the club. One moment, I'm checking my time. All right. So I say to everyone that I talk with all the time, when in doubt, don't do it. When in doubt, just don't do it. Generalize all your compliments. Don't say, oh my gosh, that skirt looks amazing on you. No, just I like the skirt. That's a nice color. You want to pay a compliment? Generalize it. I like the color of your shirt. Don't say it, you know, accentuate in the right places, or it shows off all your muscles. Don't do that. I like your shirt. I like the color of your shirt. That's all. Don't say how the lipstick makes your lip looks. Don't say how the skirt makes your behind looks. Don't say things like that. Just say, if you want to pay a compliment, generalize it. I like your shirt. That's enough. Listen, if somebody objects, apologize. I'm sorry. I did not intend to make you uncomfortable, and I'm really sorry. And I'm not going to do that again. Apologize. Don't justify. Just apologize. And practice self-awareness. For me, because like in my introduction, I've worked extensively with sexual assault and sex trafficking victims. And I understand a lot of things that a person, you know, just talking and dealing with people, you're not quite aware of. And I would say this here and now, the touching, the hugging, don't try to hug a person first. A woman, oh, we always hug women. Extend your hand first. As you get to know that person a little better, maybe they would want to hug and feel more comfortable hugging. Touch for a lot of people is triggering. Well, if you're hugging a person, don't hug them into you. Do this other kind of hug, like this. Don't grab them into you. That is triggering for a lot of people. be aware about you and how you present in spaces that you're in. Be aware of your tone, what you're saying, but how you're saying it as well. Where you're putting emphasis on which words, because all of those things say something and mean something. What is it you're saying? Choose your words carefully around anyone. It doesn't matter who it is. Choose your words carefully. When you become buddy and friends with people, then you will know what is comfortable with them and what is not comfortable for them. But as a general rule, practice self-awareness. Know who is in your space and know how you are being perceived, how you are presenting yourself. Self-awareness, self-regulation. Some people don't like some of the way you greet, but you insist. Well, this is the way I am, and this is the way I always greet people. And you insist because you're unable to regulate. And remember, it's not about you. If we have complaints, we have to listen. We have to listen without judgment. Just be open to listen. We want to resolve confidentially and promptly. When I say resolve confidentially, I'm not saying you're going to tell the person don't take any other action. But we really want the resolution to be within our space, our club. But you cannot, and we don't want, if the person talks to you, then you go tell a whole lot of people. But when I say resolve confidentially, I'm not saying that you're telling that person, oh, you can't go and tell anyone else. That's the complainant. You can't tell them, well, all right, if we talk about it and deal with it in the club, it's gonna have to end here. We would like to suggest, but we can't tell people, well, you can't take any other action. I would say to all clubs, have a sexual harassment policy. Rotary has a sexual harassment policy. Adopt it. Let people know that we have it. Email it to everybody. Talk about it in one of your club assemblies or even in your meetings. Mandatory training for all Rotarians. If you're coming into our club, mandatory training. Because it's not only the way we treat others, but there are people we work with in the community. And for us at Stabrook, and maybe for you too, we have projects that run like lifetime projects. They go on forever. So we're in the same community with the same set of people all the time. And so we have to ensure too that our Rotarians are trained so that when they go into the community, they protect themselves and the club. It's very important that we have mandatory training and we all understand what is sexual harassment and what we should be aware of and how we should conduct ourselves. Because for us, we have a school and we're in the community every day with this school. The people who are a part of our project, they need to know what is acceptable behavior and what is not. And like a quid pro quo, if you do this, I do this. And the only way you can get this is if you give me this. We need to understand that clearly. And then remember, as Rotarians, we can be harassed by the people that we serve as well. So we need to talk about that we have a policy and we have mandatory training. And then if someone complains, we have to provide support for the survivor. I already said to you, it's very debilitating. It's very stressful. A lot of us sitting in this room, we got complex trauma from childhood, complex trauma. Many women, 1 out of 4. If you're living in Guyana, 1 out of 2, we have experienced sexual violence. If it's not rape, it's an assault. And so, again, sexual harassment, the coercion, the unwanted touching, the crude jokes, the flashing, the sending people inappropriate WhatsApp things and so on, that's harassment. And some of it can really put people in a bad place It reminds them of all that has happened to them in the past. And so we need to be careful, very careful. Sexual harassment has no place within Rotary at all, because it is not fair to all concerned. Most of us live by the four-way test. We have it in our offices. We talk about it all the time. We live by this code. We do. It will not build goodwill and better friendships. It is not beneficial to all concerned. So as Rotarians, we need to guard against anything that resembles. And we can only do that if we are in the know. So this is a good training because of that. It brings our awareness. I don't know if you saw the video just before. I had a video played just before the presentation with the young worker and the boss. And there's so many things. I don't know if you took a good look at it. And many things that jump out as harassment. But the gaslighting is what I want to bring out. She's saying what it is, and he's saying, no, it's not. You have just hugged me, kissed me, you've touched me inappropriately. I am not comfortable with it. You're seeing her do, every time I use this for training and I cringe, I can't help but cringe every time. And then he's gaslighting her. And then he's saying to her, listen, he has a threat in there, well, many threats, but you know, well, this was a decision, you know, they wanted an older person. And then he talks about the pay. And in her mind, it's like, oh my God. He's already threatening her very subtly. Like, we didn't really want you. I spoke up for you to be here. They wanted an older person, you know. So we need to be careful with how we treat these issues, because it has a long-lasting effect and it has no place at all in Rotary, because it does not stand the test, the four-way test. It does not pass it. So that's my presentation. And somebody is saying, I think the percentage of sexual harassment in Rotary is relatively low. Of course, you know, I'll disagree with that. And can the clip be shown again? I'll ask PhD Luana. I don't know if it's Sean that's helping us, but after we take a few questions, perhaps we'll show it again. Thank you for your time and your attention, and free to have your questions.
Right. Thank you, Carlotta. That was a very passionate presentation, and you're so right. Sexual harassment has no place in Rotary. We should be able to and expect to operate in an environment free from harassment of any type.
Anytime.
All right, so let me just the chat group, and I'll start from the bottom up because questions were coming in between, and perhaps I'll read some comments as well. Gregory is saying, okay, all right, let me start from the bottom here. Virginia is saying, thank you. It's an important discussion, goes beyond Rotary, can behave in the club, but you should have the same behavior in your work and other surroundings. Leighton is asking a question. Do we have any stats on the level of harassment in our district? You might have to call a friend there.
You see, the thing about it is that unless you create safe spaces, people don't talk.
Yeah.
Unless you create safe spaces, people wouldn't speak. I'm sure that some people would have complained about sexual harassment. I don't know about the district figures. I've been trying to look for just Caribbean figures and so on. But I know because if generally you have 81% of a community of women, right? That can be extrapolated, and what you see in one community is mirrored in other communities, and Rotary is no different. So if there's such a high percentage of sexual harassment in the community as a whole, I know it is similar for us in Rotary, as it is for faith, as it is for workplace, as it is for everywhere, because it's the same people with the same behavior. And the other thing is that a lot of us just don't complain. And then secondly, people don't know sometimes that this is harassment. They don't know that this is harassment. And so if you can't name it, it's even another issue because you can't name it.
Okay, thanks. I see Sonia has her hands up. Maybe she has the information in terms of the reports in the district.
I don't have information regarding reports of the district. I know that the district, those things are handled really at a club level, and the district becomes involved if it cannot be resolved. As you said, Carlotta, most cases will not be reported because one, people don't actually know what sexual harassment is, male or female. And two, we in our lives, in our clubs have not created that safe space. However, I would say that given who we are and what we stand for, I would venture to guess that the incidences of sexual harassment will be not quite, it won't be negligible, but I would also say that I think it would not be high either, simply because certainly in this day, you get called out. Nobody tolerates blatant sexual harassment in whatever form. So I would venture a guess that we're not a high in Rotary on the whole. Maybe in our district, we have to do a little more in terms of education at the club level so that we can recognize that high sugar and hello sweetness is not actually appropriate. As women in Rotary, responding to and speaking to men in that way, to our colleagues, hello sweetness and all of that foolishness is not appropriate. We also have the instances of young versus old, and the young ones really chatting up the old ones. And we need to stamp it out, nip it in the bud. It is just not appropriate. Whichever way it comes, that's not for us. That's not the kind of conversation we want to have. So I'd be interested though to get some statistics, and I think I'm gonna get some work on that, because it would be interesting to know how the numbers form up for us.
Yeah. You know, I just a slight pushback, because you would think that in the community of faith, where people talk about love and trust and honesty and goodwill, that you would not see a high incidence of sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual violence. The statistics just as high. And so that is why I feel that the statistics will be high, unless we definitely have a lot of training and accountability to make it not happen. But if we see in communities of faith this kind of behavior very prevalent, and the foundation is love and goodwill and peace and all of that, and you still have this kind of behavior, then I still would want to think that it's not relatively low, unless people are being held accountable. And then sometimes you want to hold someone accountable, but then the people with the power don't care, or they they turn their face away, or they all do it. So it's acceptable. And so I think what you said too is we have to know that it is sexual assault. That's the first thing. Now, or sexual harassment. We have to know that it is. Oh, I did not realize that my slides weren't changing. I thought they were. So you weren't seeing all my slides. Sorry.
All right, Carlotta, can I continue with the questions?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, all right. So Gregory is saying COVID presents us an opportunity to reset. Mark is asking, are there any subtle forms of sexual harassment that you perhaps would like to share with us?
Yes. The subtle things like the way you speak, your tone. So the suggestive ways that you speak. Sexual harassment can be subtle ways of sending. You know, a lot of times we send things by WhatsApp, and some persons, if they keep getting that, that is harassing to them because they're not comfortable with it. The one that we talked about, the way the terms of endearment can be harassing to people. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at for a Rotary. Constantly asking somebody, may I buy you a drink? And the person says no. And then next meeting, may I buy you a drink? No. But you keep asking them every time, or you keep sending them a drink even though they don't want you to buy them a drink. That's harassment. Constantly asking somebody to go out even though they say I don't want to. Constantly calling somebody at certain times of night because now is when I have the time to discuss Rotary business. But I told you not to call me at that time.
Okay, all right. Adish is asking, what course of action can a club take if a report of sexual harassment is made against a member?
I think it's first to investigate. You take the report and then you talk to the person who the allegations is made against. Talk to them about it.
But that's the board that does that, right, Carlotta? Not just any and everybody?
Not just the club, the board.
That's right.
Of course, has to be the board.
Okay, all right. Marlon is asking, he's seen men hug women in Rotary, and while I may not do that, women seem fine and warm. What if they're comfortable with it? And how can you truly tell the receiving party isn't comfortable? Should everyone then, for example, be hugged the same way, for example, as a non-prolonged or non-sexual way to prevent such issues?
Sometimes you really never know. And that's what I was saying at the beginning. It's cultural for us to hug, but some people don't like hugging. Offer people your hand first. Shake their hand. And if somebody doesn't want to be hugged, sometimes you can tell by their stance, the way they stiffen, the way they react to it. But sometimes you just don't know. You just don't know because they just don't say. So wait for them perhaps to see if they want to hug, how they approach you. You know, if they put their arms out and up first. It's just trying to, sometimes it's a maze and it's hard to figure. So the simple thing is to greet with, well, now we don't even shake hands because of COVID. Maybe we doing this as we, you know, giving a nod, saying a hello, namaste, something like that. Putting your hand on the heart. Maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
So we know no longer need hugs.
Well, as Gregory says, it's a good time for us to reset. Adish has another question here. In recent times, sexual harassment leans towards women only. Why is it not discussed generally, as men are sexually harassed as well? I think you kind of addressed that in your presentation, but you can respond if you wish.
Yeah, again, the statistics. A lot of times if men come out and say us, we laugh. We, when I say we, I'm talking about, I'm generalizing that. Oh, please, you should be happy that a woman is paying attention to you, or, you know, we make light of it. And so in a lot of cases, men just do not come forward, but men are harassed as well. But when we frame these conversations, because the statistic says 81% of women and 17% of men in one study, then we say women are more likely to be harassed. And then the whole thing of tradition and spaces being created, the patriarchal society, men as rulers, men as the ones holding the power. So when women come to create a space or to be included in a space, these are some of the responses. So that's why you hear, generally speaking, in conversations, that we say women, women, women.
All right. Mark is asking, where is the policy for sexual harassment for Rotary? Obviously, Mark hasn't gone to the learning centers yet.
There's a policy there.
Of course. There's also on the code of conduct, the number 5 speaks very clearly to sexual harassment and reporting of it. So Mark, you need to go to the learning center. I believe this may be everything. There were many questions, many comments on the whole discussion. And I think that's about it. Thank you. Over to PAT Luana.
Thank you, PP Liz. But I have a question, and this question is going to stir the pot a bit. You ended your presentation by saying there's serious consequences. And DGE Sonia said that people don't object because they don't know what sexual harassment is, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Now, in this vein, and sexual harassment is a topic that I spend a lot of time thinking about in my quiet moments, because I've had issues reported to me, both in my work life and my Rotary life. So I'll give you examples. Work life, one of my staff came and said she feels sexually harassed because a male staff asked her what she was cooking that day. Is that sexual harassment, or is that inappropriate? And I think we need to define further what is appropriate, what is harassment, and what is sexual harassment, if only because there are serious consequences. Then you have a situation involving me, where a colleague consultant of mine changed hotel rooms, and I asked him, when he came into the office, I said, "How is your new room?" He leaned over my desk and said to me, "It's fantastic. Would you like to come and check it out?" It wasn't only what he said, it was the way he said it, very suggestively. Well, I mean, the Guyanese, people like Liz and so on this chat would know that that didn't go down well with me. So we were about to go into a meeting. And so I marched ahead of him into the meeting, reported to 18 people what he just did, and demanded an apology, which I got, because the meeting was now going to start with me sitting in that room with him, because I felt his comments were grossly inappropriate. My Rotary example now. Young Rotaractor came to me. She went to the office of a Rotarian for sponsorship for an event. And he told her, "You look good in that jeans." I got the report. I was the AG at the time. I got the report. It was the young lady was very upset. And she said to me, she was sexually harassed. Now, I would like you to tell me, in those 3 examples I've given you, which one is really sexual harassment, which one is harassment, and which one is inappropriate conduct? Because I think, in fairness to the men, because all these instances, these examples involved men as the perpetrator, I think in fairness to them, I think we should really be careful how we go around the place saying we were sexually harassed. I have my own personal views, but I would like to hear from you as a professional. Is that sexual harassment?
So, first thing is context, right? He asked her, "What you cooked today?"
Yeah.
Sexual harassment. Oh, sorry.
I would say if that's all he said, I would say that doesn't sound to me like sexual harassment. However, somebody may say, well, you don't understand the context. When he says, "Will you cook today?" They have some prior understanding, but on the face of it, I don't think that's sexual harassment. I don't think it is, but maybe you have to question her some more. Ask her not one or two more questions, but on the face of it, no. You're
was on a WhatsApp chat. He was working from home. She was at work. And so he just, making conversation. So will you cook today? Simple. But then she runs into my office to say, I feel sexually harassed.
nah, I would say it's not sexual harassment on the face of it. Now, you're coordinating for a part of your job is to ensure that the consultant is comfortable and that the work that a consultant is here for can get done. So you have a conducive environment. You see the consultant, you say, "Sir, good morning," or however you address them, "Good morning, how is your room?" Because you had an issue with it. So how is your room? And he says, and notice the way you said it. You're reporting. And when you responded, when you gave us his response, we heard the intonation, we heard your voice, the way you said it. So if you're quoting him, just his tone alone, and then he's asking you, "Would you like to come and see it?" That is suggestive. And if he used, "Well, it's good, would you like to come and see it?" Depending, that made you, how do you feel? So that's the other question. It's not what he intends, it's how the person receives it. So how do you feel about that? So if you feel that was appropriate,
I went from 0 to 200 in a split
so for you feel harassed.
Yes, I felt.
Not the comment, it's the tone, it's the way he's saying it, it's the intonation, the way he's asking you the question, he's suggesting. It is subtle. It is very suggestive. And as an adult, you pretty much understand what he's even if he's not serious about it, even if he doesn't really mean that you should come to his room. The fact that he's saying that, it is very suggestive, and so you have a right to feel harassed. The person, the rotaractor, again, and that's what we said. It's not what you intend. You look, if you're talking, what he said, you look good in the jeans. Some people don't like that. Some people feel as though it's a subtle message. And so I would say that's a nice jeans, full stop, if you must compliment. Because that person is feeling like you've made an inappropriate comment to them and they do not feel comfortable with it. So it's not only what you intend, I told you about the impact as well.
Thank you. So 2 out of the 3 was sexual harassment.
I would say 2 out of the 3. I would say this, at least the person who says the jean, you look good in that jeans, the comment can be inappropriate, and you can tell that person, listen, the comment, you did not mean to harass the person, but the comment is inappropriate and they are feeling uncomfortable with it. And so, yes, you can't say that.
Yeah, but I think that we should still also consider the entire situation, the context of which it was said, because there's a fine line, and sometimes I feel sympathetic to those who are being accused, because when you review the situation, like in the case with my staff, when you review the situation, it really isn't what they're being accused of. And so this is why I think that we should really not react first, but think about it before you go and accuse someone of sexual harassment, only because there's serious consequences.
Right? If it is proven,
if it is proven.
I just want to belabor this whole point. It is not your intent. It is how is the impact. It is how I am taking it. It is not what you're doing because you're accustomed. It is how I am interpreting it. I mean, the one with what you're cooking today, and that seems far-fetched, right? So I would exclude that one. But even the last one with the Rotary having on her jeans, and then the person's telling her, oh, you look good in that jeans. It doesn't matter if you just meant to give her a compliment. It is how she feels about what you're saying. And the thing is, these things are so normalized. You can't take a compliment to me, you look good, and somebody tell you look good. What's the problem? He telling you that you look good. I mean, you can't even accept that you look good. And so, you turn it back on the person, but it is not what you say. It is how the person accepts it. So if they don't want to compliment, then you shouldn't. We should compliment the pants and not the person in it. That is the problem. Because when you say, that pants look good on you, all those things are suggestive. It is contextual. Language is contextual. So what do I get from it when you say that to me? You make me uncomfortable.
I hear you. Thank you. So if there are no other questions, we can move into our housekeeping matters. Thank you, PP Carlotta, for this most interesting and interactive session. I can promise you that we will maybe run 2 more sessions like this in the next Rotary year so that we can really understand more about sexual harassment and how we can deal with it. I think that is needed. Our next session will be held on Thursday, and that session will be working with youth, and it will be done by PDG Tim Schuler, another appropriate session for us because we are getting our interactors and Rotaractors more involved in Rotary now. So please register for that session, and after that we'll have 2 more sessions, and then it's a wrap. We go straight into PETS and District Conference. Encouraging all clubs again to register for the PETS and District Conference using the club rate of $500 US, so all club members can have access to the sessions. Please remember to send your name, the name of your club trainer, so that we can get our committee going and hit the ground running on 1st of July. I'd like to ask all persons registering for these pre-PET sessions to please double check your emails. We're getting a lot of emails bouncing back to us saying the email address is incorrect. So could you please double check when registering? Now, if anyone has participated in a session and did not receive a questionnaire to fill up, kindly contact me directly and I'll be happy to send it to you. I think that's a wrap. We'll go to the vote of thanks, and then we'll ask DGE Sonia for her closing remarks, and then we'll call it a night. So over for the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. All protocols observed. PP Carlotta, on behalf of DGE Sonia, PAG Luana, and the district training team, I extend our heartfelt thanks for your thought-provoking and sensitive discussion on this matter. As you said, most people are very cagey around sexual harassment or harassment in general, because first of all, it's such a difficult thing to prove, but I'm sure that all of us here today will remember what you said. It's about the impact on the club and not your intent. So impact has to be considered higher than one's intent. So thank you for that. And when in doubt, don't do it. Very good advice. I'm sure we all appreciate it. And I'm sure that all of us here will think twice before we hug and touch and do things that may be considered inappropriate. So thanks once again for your very exciting and interesting presentation. Thank you to all our participants. Thanks for taking the time to be here with us this evening. Your questions made this session even more interactive, which we very much appreciate. And last but not least, thanks to everyone in the background who work behind the scenes to ensure that these sessions are smoothly executed. Our district training team, and the technical support personnel. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Charlene. Carlotta, awesome, awesome presentation.
Thank you.
We're at the tip of that iceberg, so we have to go a little deeper. It's worth it to have sessions where we can have this kind of discussion. It's worth it also to think about how we interact with each other as Rotarians, how we interact with each other in general. Know your space, know your people. That's how and I love what you said. If you're not sure, just don't do it. So my pledge, as Luana said, I was typing as she was saying, we're going to have some more of these sessions. I think we need to have, we also need to have, and it was dropped in the comments, we need to have some male perspectives as well, because they are, and I know from their egos, men do not report these things. They don't want anybody to laugh. And it's just not funny. I am an extremely straight person. I don't tolerate any kind of, you don't, when you slip with me, you slide. Because I just tell you straight. And I if it's on a WhatsApp or so, I delete myself. I am not putting up with that foolishness, because you will never say, oh, it was okay with her yesterday. Why is she strange today? No. So we gotta get, we have to get statistics. I like the idea. Carlotta, I think I'm gonna be calling you on that. We gotta find out about what goes on in our district.
Yeah.
We have to have some more sessions education-wise, and we got to have sessions where we can talk the two perspectives, men and women, because it definitely is not a one-sided thing. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this evening. Please go to the Learning Center. These courses are on the Learning Center. Sexual harassment policy is there in Rotary.org. I urge you. Rotary International has a wealth of information and resources available to all of us to get. Just go on it, search for your topics, and they will appear. So I'll see you on Thursday, working with youth with PDG Tim. Looking forward to another great session. Thank you very much, and do have a great evening. See you then.